BBC Breakfast faced a tirade of backlash on Thursday when Naga Munchetty and Stayt spoke with guest Limor Sella-Broyde about the Israel-Gaza war. Charlie began, "Let's go back to one of our main stories this morning and the breaking news this morning. 2 people have been shot dead in Jerusalem by attackers who opened fire at a bus stop. This was in the rush hour. 7 more have been injured." Naga continued. One of the victims is reported to be a 24-year-old woman. The other is a man in his 70s. The 2 gunmen were shot dead by Israeli police at the scene, and the attack came just hours after a temporary ceasefire was announced allowing more Israeli hostages and Palestinian prisoners to be released. "We know that yesterday 16 more hostages were released before being taken to a hospital in Tel Aviv," Charlie went on before Naga added, "Now in the last hour, we've just heard from Israel's Prime Minister's office, which says it received the list of hostages to be released today, saying their families have been notified." Turning to their guest Limor in the studio, Naga explained, 6 of her family members were released on Saturday, 12 of her relatives in total were taken hostage in the October 7 attack, and 3 of them were tragically killed. "Good morning. How are you at the moment? You're hearing news from your families, you're hearing that some have been released, you've had deaths in your family. How are you?" Limor replied, "It's very complex. I don't think anybody can imagine anything like this, and the rollercoaster of emotions is a lot to handle. I don't think we really started processing everything. It's kind of put in delay. So it's compartmentalizing emotions in a way you put things aside and hope to deal with them later." The BBC Breakfast host went on, "Obviously on a day like today, another extension to this temporary truce in order to facilitate the release of Palestinian prisoners, and its Israeli hostages as well. Talk to me, tell me about the family relatives who have been taken and who have been released, and, you know, they range in ages." The guest replied, "We're talking about my cousins, we have a very large family. My family from my dad's side had been in Israel for the past 8 or 9 generations. Depending on who you ask. So it's a large family and we were very tight. So we grew up together. 10 of my family members were hit in Kibbutz Be'eri." While many fans sympathized with Limor, others felt BBC Breakfast could have made the interview more balanced by inviting a Palestinian onto the program as well. At Essex-Regged complained, #BBC Breakfast #BBC News #BBC When is the BBC going to give a Palestinian 20 or so minutes to give their side of having their homes and country bombed to hell for 6 weeks? Remove the license fee from the biased BBC, #remove the license fee. Sick, @ismith3 asked, "Why is this woman, not Palestinians, speaking on behalf of the Palestinian people, spewing so much nonsense, given so much time to spread Israeli propaganda? There should be a right of reply #BBC Breakfast." John Who Evans too went on, "At BBC Breakfast, in the interests of balance, please tell us about the Palestinians held by Israel. Why were they detained and under what legal process? Are you giving equal time to people from both sides? Are there any Palestinian mothers doing the media rounds? At Ofcom. Sick, Just Sandy Smith quizzed, will the BBC Breakfast now give 14 minutes of airtime to a Gazan woman explaining how she has lived since October 7? Please be more balanced. James Merkin 1 pleaded, I do hope you'll be doing an equivalent interview with someone to describe the impact on a normal Palestinian family. At BBC Breakfast, Greg_Zulu_Alpha simply said, at BBC Breakfast bias much, #Israel #Palestine genocide. Express.co.uk has reached out to the BBC for comment. BBC Breakfast airs daily at 6 a.m. on BBC One.